to be together. I hope that that means that you enjoyed that long weekend and not having a late meeting on that last day before the long weekend. So I want to use your time very wisely, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. You should have access to this presentation. It's linked on the Canvas page under personalized pathways. So if you want to follow along on your own, you can see the slides yourself. It's just a link directly to the Canva page. So we are following a theme for personalized pathways that we are language detectives, and we are detecting the clues, the key language uses, narrate, inform, explain, and argue, so that we can prioritize and organize the integration of language and content. A lot of this you're going to see is the same pattern as last time, but please stop me if you have any questions or any points you'd like to add. Your experience using these with students is certainly a valuable contribution to the conversation, and I would like to pause and give you space. So please just speak up, unmute, or add to the chat, and then somebody let me know that I need to give the microphone over, and I'll be happy to do that. This is our mission. I'll give you just a chance to look at it one more time and see if there's any thoughts. This is where I made the mistake that should say inform. We're working on inform. Again, it doesn't matter how many times I review my slides, I still miss certain things. And here's our content objective. This connects with some of your professional learning goals that you set if you used the example or model that I gave. So are there any comments or questions about how the key language uses are showing up in your classrooms? Okay. And our language objective is that ESL teachers will be able to support our classroom and content colleagues as they look for the academic language in the content standards they're already teaching. So I'd like to ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being very confident, how confident do you feel in being able to support your content and classroom colleagues with the key language uses or academic language in their standards? So I'm looking for maybe a waterfall response, 1 through 5 in the chat. Okay. Good. Yeah, okay, great. That's great. So we're getting there. And so let me ask you this really quickly. Do you think that today's personalized pathways is going to be a part of getting you to feeling more confident? Is this meeting something that's helping you go there? Or maybe privately in the chat, you can tell me what else you would like to help increase and boost your confidence in being able to notice the key language uses and help your colleagues with that as well. Anybody have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's too much to type. I'm in the car. So I just wanted to say I thought that this is kind of relates to what we teach in, how we follow in like narrate, inform. And I'm in the middle of this inform, following the curriculum that you so kindly provided us this year. So I was looking for kind of like tips on, more how to implement it in the class, maybe, or how to take it out of my class and bring it to, when I push in and support my students in the content areas in different classrooms, like ELA, science, and so forth.
Okay. Yes, great. Thank you for saying that. I'm taking notes, and I will definitely think about ways to get those tips to you. Let's see, Hernan, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to say that a key that has been working for me is being constantly making the students aware of what we're doing in the class. So like every time at the beginning of my slides, my presentation, when I start, we have a routine. So I present the an idiom of the week or a word of the week and something like that. Also, we review behavior and things like that. But also I make them aware that we are working on information and to inform in ways that they will be able to inform at the end of the week, at the end of our lessons, if we're going to use a graphic organizer or an essay or a sequence of events. And I think the transition from first quarter to second quarter was really well, because now the students, they know that we're working on informational texts, and that is not stories. So they know that we are researching on the iPad or the computer, or I'm just showing them information for them to reflect on that and participate. So they know that we are working on that kind of content, and it's not stories. So that's been working for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Hernan. I really appreciate that. Anybody else? Okay. So let's move on. I want to make sure that you have access to our district Canvas web pages. And so I'm going to throw those in the chats. The bit.lys won't necessarily, hyperlink, you'll have to copy the bit.ly and put it in, but we do have all 3 Canvas pages now. So if you are looking for these slides, you can go into the Canvas page that's on your screen right now. You can go to the part that says personalized pathways, and you can look for the December 1st quarter 2 personalized pathways, and you should see these slides, and you can come back and revisit them. I am not sure, but I think you can see my notes as well if you want to see my notes in the slides. So just because we have maybe some new people who are joining us recently, thanks, Sarah. That's okay. Let me know if you need anything from me, and maybe Rebecca can help her get connected too. So just because we might have some new people that are joining Personalized Pathways perhaps for the first time, or this is just your first year, I do want to make sure I'm telling everybody what it looks like and kind of answering any questions about what it means. So Personalized Pathways started because I took a couple of workshop courses on Personalized Pathways and thought, hey, I need to do this because ESL teachers have varying goals and varying levels of expertise, and I want everybody to be able to grow from where they are and not act like we're all in the exact same space. And so the whole idea is that you get to pick the kind of growth you need and set your own goals and go in your own way. And this year, because we are all learning WIDA 2020 together, we organized our pathways around these 4 big ideas from WIDA. And I do think that the 4 big ideas are going to show up any direction that you come in to WIDA. Any of these pathways will get you into understanding those new English language development standards frameworks. And it doesn't really matter what other book, what other content learning you're using, it's all going to be able to find a way to mesh together. Speaking of which, the books are in, and I think the very last books just came in this week and are on their way out to you. So if you ordered a book for Personalized Pathways, you should have gotten it or be getting it very, very soon. So here's what it looks like. For Personalized Pathways, we have these meetings, and it's really these meetings for Personalized Pathways are one bit of how I do a little bit of direct instruction, but also we spend a lot of time, as we've noticed, in the conversations with your colleagues. And the goal with those conversations with your colleagues is that you have time to do this reflective practice where you're discussing with your colleagues whatever it is that you're learning and hearing from them what they're learning. And as you go forward, if you want to also do asset creation or even contribute back to the unit plan organizers that we've created, you can involve yourself that way. Some people for quarter 1 created just lesson plans and showed me lesson plans that they did to earn their credit for asset creation. And what this means then is you kind of get to pick your level of engagement, what's useful for you, and you don't have to pick anything that's overly demanding for you for this year. If you need more CEUs, you can do more learning, more creating, more reflecting. And if you don't need that many CEUs, you can let it go for right now, and there's less pressure, I hope. So are there any questions about that process and how you get those credits? Okay, in the chat, I've put the form, which should be your personalized pathways self-report. So if you have done any of these steps and you want to earn CEUs for them, you just have to tell me on that report. And although I am behind, I do eventually get your credits entered into KickUp so that you can earn those credits. I got them done today for Q1. Okay, so the next few slides might be hard to see. And so if you want to follow along in this case, just directly from our WIDA 2020 standards, we're going to start somewhere around page 221. So I just put the PDF in there. You can open up your book if you have it. We're around page 221, and we're going to start by looking at some of the linguistic and organizational features of these key language uses. Who needs time for me to let you get settled? Okay, so
I'm sorry, Tamara, can I ask a quick question?
of course,
Yes, I followed that form. You know, you provided the link.
sure.
There is this question. It says, which foundation learning content did you work with this quarter? And then it's like, I read part of or all of a book, or just any book?
So at the beginning of the year, you had the option to ask for a book for your personalized pathways. And like I said, we just got the last few in and on their way out to you. But some people did not choose a book because you have WIDA 2020 in front of you and you
Okay.
just wanted to do just that. And
So
that's
I can just
fine.
click one thing, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes. And you could also be reading a book you purchased that David didn't get for you. That's also acceptable. Yeah. Okay, so there are three common features for all key language uses that WIDA is pointing out that are these linguistic and organizational features. Last time we were together, we talked about noun groups, which is all of the words before and after the noun that go with that noun, and teaching students how to kind of treat that as a unit. So today you're looking at the definition for nominalization, which is this idea of taking an abstract noun, like we say nouns are person, place, thing, or idea, but this is taking those ideas and turning them into nouns. So things like in these examples given here, discrimination or an assumption or fragmentation or pollination, things that might be really a little more difficult for students to see as a noun. So how might we explicitly teach nominalization to our learners? And what are you already doing to make this concept stick? I'd love to hear from you what's working.
I'll contribute.
Okay.
I look at suffixes and prefixes and root words, and a lot of the nominalization words end with TION, which means basically the act of or process of.
Mm-hmm.
So like the question is the act or process of, answering your question. Pollination is the act or process of pollinating flowers. So that kind of gives it a name.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make it, you can take the nation and then say, so pollinating is a verb, just as an example. So I think that's one way to teach it, that they can recognize whenever you see that TION, it's the act of doing something, transportation or whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so my kids have a real hard time with these words, like the older students. They come up a lot in their readings. I always tell them to try to go back and pull out the verb from the word. I have a bunch of like I do the suffix, the shun stuff, and I'll say, okay, so pull out what's the verb there. So they try to pull out, discriminate. Like actually, I had to teach discrimination from a reading I did. Which is harder, but then like the word to discriminate, it's kind of used more, it's easier to use in a sense in these nominal forms. But one of the problems I found is like words like deposition, there's deposit, and then it becomes the vowel changes and becomes a schwa, like an or something. And that happens all the time with these words, where they'll know the word if it's like in a verb form, but then it changes like and I don't know exactly what it's called, but the vowel sound changes when you add these endings, and it trips them up a little. So we just really stop on them and just try to pull out the verb. What form of that word do you know? So
that is really interesting, because you're right. The vowel is going to change when there are more syllables, because only a stressed vowel is pronounced as not a schwa, right? Am I right? I think that.
Yeah, it deals with the stress stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, they would. That's interesting. Hernan, you have something to add to that?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that the suffix idea, it's very valid, especially with 4th and 5th graders. I've used that kind of strategy. Also, if, well, it happens to be that I speak Spanish, and so most of my students are Hispanic, I used words that are similar in Spanish, like fragmentación, you know, I forgot the word. What's the word? Cognates.
Oh, yes.
Right. So like polinización, fragmentación, deposición, all of those, most of all those words are similar in Spanish. Also, what's something that's been working for me when I need to kind of help them understand that is that it doesn't apply for all of them, but it applies for many, to show them that that is a process. It could be a process. Like we were working on the respiratory system, so circulation. So I showed them some pictures of how the blood starts from the heart, and then it goes through the veins and the arteries. So it is like a process in that case, circulation. So they understood that circulation is a process that starts in the heart and then the veins and then the arteries and things like that. So sometimes it works with, you know, pictures to show them that it is a process, or words similar in Spanish, or the suffixes.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody else want to share how you work with nominalization? I want to point, oh, go ahead, sorry. Oh, hi, Elizabeth.
Sorry, hey, I was just going to say, I have little kids, you know, so that's a pretty big idea for little kids. But today we just happened to be reading about evaporate and evaporation, and they didn't even realize that those were kind of the same words. So we had to stop and point out, right? Look, it's the same until you get to the end. And so even with little kids, they do come up in texts, and they can begin to appreciate that, even if we don't call them nominalizations yet.
Right. Because when we can help them create one entry in their lexicon instead of 2 separate entries, I think that's kind of useful, right? So I don't know where your lexicon lives. I don't know that mine lives here, but I'm just pretending that it does. Right here is where my personal dictionary lives. One thing that I really like is that WIDA says these 3 common features of all the key language uses are portable. So if we teach it, if we can teach nominalization one way in any one of these key language uses, they should be able to see it another way. If we teach it in, you know, with the little kids, then we should be able to see it again as they go through their years of schooling. Rebecca, do you want to talk about zombie nouns? I like that. That sounds fun.
Only that they're really discouraged in academic writing, that people really don't like them, and they, but they occur in the English language quite a bit. There's an ed talk about it, in fact, if you Google it. But you know, I think that goes back to when we teach morphology and suffixes, and, you know, teaching the shun or any of the other word endings. As long as they know the root, then they can navigate those different forms of the word.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to move away from the common features and start looking very specifically at the unique features for Inform. Again, this is where if your screen is small, you might not be able to read the words. So I'm going to just direct you right back to the PDF or to your own book. We're looking at pages 25 through 27, or I'm sorry, 225 through 227. If you want to see these charts bigger, I mean, I really did copy and paste them in from that source that you have. So Inform has some unique features. And one of the things we want to look at is these sample genres that they're giving us. And I notice that they're all reports. So tell me how you might use reports in your class.
Do you mean like in writing, speech, or like in the domain, language domains, or do you mean thematically?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of asking for any of them, because what I'm wondering is, if not, I'm kind of wondering what we kind of talked about this morning, for those of you who are here this morning, that perhaps we're not doing reports in the upper grades in the same way that we do reports in the lower grades. And maybe you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about my final project on information in that quarter to do something multimodal report that will include video and voiceover and writing, you know, how they would put it together when they do research on the adaptation of an animal of their choice. Because I thought it will be neat to put it, you know, together, because I have newcomers, so they cannot really produce lengthy descriptive paragraphs. We're talking about 6, maybe 8 sentences. So, but they can support it with some, you know, pictures, visuals, video, voiceover, things like that.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody else reports? Just a few different ways that you use reports. And you can borrow from the ones on the screen if you can see them.
I mean, sometimes in my class, what they narrated before in writing, they then report it to the class. You know, what we were focusing on more with the, a lot of them did different pieces where they were talking about, they were using narrate, and now they're reporting on things that, you know, presenting it to the class.
Okay. All right, so we can see here some of these examples. Thank you for sharing those out. And now we can look at it through the years. And it does change. And I'm going to show you this again in a different way in a few slides, but it does change kind of dramatically through the years of schooling, because we do begin at those young levels. And think about, this is not necessarily just what English learners do, but what the early elementary curriculum requires versus as the curriculum goes on through the years. That at the beginning, we really are like giving students opportunities to tell students, for students to tell us what they already know. We're not necessarily asking them to go learn something new to make a report. It's like, tell me about your pet, tell me about your room, tell me, you know, whatever. So things that they already know very well. And then as it goes a little bit further up, it's the research topics. Go learn so that you can report. So because this demand increases through the years of schooling, we know that multilingual learners need ongoing explicit support throughout the grades. So I want to consider newcomers. Perhaps they've missed early grade opportunities to develop their sense of inform by reporting on those well-known topics. And now we're asking them to do reporting and informing on more complex topics. So how do we help our English learners, but especially, for example, our newcomers, step into that grade level expectation of inform?
I think it greatly depends whether they went through some kind of formal schooling or not, because this skill is transferable. If they know how to do reports in Spanish, you know, all they need is some vocabulary in English, and they can, you know, they can do it. Now, if they never done it before, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah. Beth, I think maybe you were going to try to talk.
Yes, I was just gonna contribute by sharing what we understand by informing here at Forest Park. What we do, for example, in this unit with the fifth graders that we have been teaching about natural disasters, we have been having them research on the topic first, think, pair, and share, and then make conclusions. And then it's part of description and part of researching. So when they get together, they discuss what their findings are or were. And the way that they present it is via a hands-on project, something that looks like this. I don't know if you can see it. For example, they didn't define the natural disasters. What they did is actually have them, what they caused them. So they were not only, defining them, but going a little bit further than that. They could see the video, oh, what is this tsunami? What is that avalanche or wildfire, blizzard, or whatever, natural disaster? But in the end, they may see the definition is different from the causes or what caused them. And they could make connections.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to share. With them.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I do love your Photable hands-on project. I think that's great. Javier?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Look. This is happening the whole day.
Absolutely.
It is crazy and ridiculous. Sorry. What I'm doing with my students is talking about the holidays that we have in America. They don't know any about it. They need to know what is Thanksgiving. So we made like a handouts like this, where they can color, they can use new words, build up sentences, use graphic organizers, scramble words, put it in correct order. I'm introducing the new vocabulary and they building up sentences. So this is what I use in crossword, puzzles, and all this stuff. This is something that I shared with them for the week that they were out of school. So those materials, I put them together, it has everything, the words, the sentences, and then the readings. The readings that you can see when words that they learned before are already integrated. And then at the end, they have a little essay that says, what did I learn about Thanksgiving? So I did that with the Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Hanukkah. That's what I've been doing all together. So this is what increases the vocabulary, is giving them information about the holidays. They getting some information about history, because we're talking about Abraham Lincoln, we're talking about Benjamin Franklin, when is became the Thanksgiving official, and what is the part of from the turkey, etc. All these things, and what is also the traditional dish for Thanksgiving. Because sometimes they're talking about chicken and tamales, and I say no. That's not
I had filet this Thanksgiving, and I was very happy to have my favorite instead of that turkey.
But anyway, I just wanted to be familiar with the traditional customs that we do here in the United States. And also they learning, they reading, they writing, and they increasing their vocabulary. That's what I'm doing.
Well, thank you for sharing. So I'm going to move us on to see Inform across the content areas. And so reports and Inform kind of is used to describe phenomena and entities. So we might see Inform a lot in science and social studies, but it's also there, according to WIDA, in mathematics and language arts. But I also want to kind of tell you what WIDA is telling us about how these key language uses interact. And I want to drop this as sort of a question into the group. So when students are researching new topics, they have new knowledge that can inform the basis for their evidence in arguments, which is our fourth key language use. That research material can also inform the background of a narrative, our first key language use. When they explain our third key language use, a phenomenon with a poster, for example, they might need to inform by providing a definition, like Beth was saying, the difference between the definition and the causes or the effects. So we can see different ways that Inform is connected in the different other key language uses. And to me, based on the feedback I'm hearing from our colleagues recently, Inform might be one of the messiest to separate from the others. And so this is what I want to ask you. How does the use of Inform in the other key language uses impact what we tried to do by isolating it this quarter? Like, was that a frustration for you? Were you able to find a way to just go ahead and connect it where you needed it to go?
I think it slides very nicely from narrate to inform, because narrate, you're telling stories. And it's, I guess, broader, or depend, it's characters, it's plot line. And when you get to inform, it's more detail oriented, so, or it, not really detail, but now they really have to know something,
Mhm.
It's more specific, meiosis, mitosis. It's not like, well, and she went into the woods and she swam in the pond, and it's very different. And they're giving information. It's more factual.
Okay. Yeah, and that's also showing up in the chat that Inform contrasts with narrate. So it's emphasizing maybe nonfiction as opposed to fiction. Hernan, go ahead.
I think it's very, very beneficial for the students to have, or for us to give the students different ideas of how to present information through graphic organizers. Well, like so far, for example, my fifth graders and fourth and fifth graders, they worked on working on a compare and contrast, like a Venn diagram, and then based on that information, they type a little essay, because that's another thing I've been asking them to type, because I know in the exercise they will be able to type. I mean, they will be asked to type. So and present that information, or using a T-chart or a sequence of events, and so they are getting used to these different ways to present information. And also the sequence words or signal words that they can use to present different things, if they are comparing or contrasting, or if they are showing a sequence of events. And another thing that I wanted to add was that there was one time that I worked with, and this was with my second graders. We worked on a realistic fiction. So it was The Trouble Is My English, I think it was
Yes.
the title of the book. And so it was a story, but at the same time, it was information, very interesting information. And the students, some of them, they felt like identified, because those were some of the issues that maybe some of my students went through, that they were confused because they learned one thing, and then the next day the teacher told them, well, that's the exception, and things like that. So it was a story, but at the same time, it was information.
Right. Yes. So even like I'm learning, even when I'm reading fiction, I'm learning information that I might not know. And I wonder for some students where that line is, for example, I'm reading a book right now that is not a culture of books that I typically read. So I don't know what part is the fantasy and what part is the culture that I'm unaware of. I just don't know. And I will find out as I continue on and as I do my research to answer those questions, but I don't know immediately on the page. So it's very interesting to me to look at what's the fiction and where's the information that I can take away from this fiction book. So as I said, I've been really wondering about our experience of Inform throughout this quarter, and kind of especially for the elementary teachers, because we see that in kindergarten and first grade, Inform is across the content areas. You see that weighty, the dark circles. Now remember that the dark circles are most prominent, the half circles are prominent, and the open circles are present. So it's still all here. But as we move up in the grade levels, Inform steps away, like it's not as heavy, it's not as prominent, and it certainly isn't as unpacked in WIDA 2020. And it kind of stays the same, starting in grades 2, whoops, I went too far, and going all the way up through grades 12. We move away from inform and into explain and argue. And so I'm wondering whether that prevalence of inform or the lack of prevalence at inform at your particular grade level corresponds to the way you've gone about highlighting this feature this quarter.
Tamara, I saw in the comments that a lot of people said it was kind of confusing between inform and explain, which I kind of agree with, but I guess the way I've been thinking about it, which kind of goes along with these charts, is that informing is more like lower level recall, I guess, whereas explaining is more like taking it deeper, like why did it happen or how did it happen? Whereas like the who, what, when, where is more the informing. I don't know if that is exactly the difference or not.
I mean, well, and keep in mind, we're learning together. Yeah. And that's where I'm kind of settling in too. And so, yeah, inform is a springboard to the other key language uses I think that's where I'm falling. And, you know, I did not think at the beginning of this year, we're going to do one key language use each quarter, that would be what we need to do next year. We're just getting used to it this year. And I do think we need to be able to blend these key language uses and see them where they are and teach where they are more than kind of shove it. But for this year, I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to get to know them. But certainly this quarter, one of my big takeaways is maybe we certainly don't need a whole quarter for inform, maybe just one unit and move on. Maureen, I'd like to hear from you.
I am now realizing that I was supposed to be where I guess people are done with inform, but that's not how it's going when you're not at a school every day. We are starting inform.
Okay.
So I think I would say that maybe not a whole quarter if you're able to see the kids every day. But in order to dig into narrate, we needed literally double the time. However, just starting narrate with the kids who are in 5th grade, or not narrate, inform, with the kids who are in 5th grade who have had interrupted education since 3rd grade, all of them. I think we're going to need longer on inform than in other years, not from what you're saying, but from what WIDA is showing, that it will be more prevalent because they're having to sort of backtrack and regain skills or entrench skills that they would have had maybe a bit more solidly. Then maybe once they get it quicker because they're older or maybe have had more experience in school, we can get to explain. But I kind of like that explain and inform are messy together, because then if you're ready to just go to explain, just go. And it doesn't have to be a hard line. So that's just I'm determined to be the split school. If I have to be the one, I will do it. But that's what I have seen from my experience. K-5, 2 schools, we're going to take a long time, which I'm happy about.
Thank you for sharing that experience. I really appreciate hearing the way that you talked about it. Megan.
So just from a middle school ESL teacher, I am trying to help, so I'm doing all of these, but I'm kind of going at my own pace because I'm also trying to tie it into what they're doing in their ELA classes. And so each grade level is doing something different. And so I think having that, having the whole quarter is pretty great. But then I've already gone into, I looked at the 3rd quarter already because we're doing certain things in different grade levels. So I really appreciate the length of things, the length that we have, and that we actually have some kind of resources. But yeah, I think if that's all you're using and that's all you're going off of, you're definitely going to need more for the quarter.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Anybody else?
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
I must see it much too literal, because the way I look at inform and explain, I think of even an ACES paragraph or a text structure. To me, it's inform is answering the question, and then the text evidence or the evidence to further explain it. To me, it's sort of connected. I mean, granted, first you teach them, okay, we got to answer the question. But I still do that ACEs where you answer the question and then you cite evidence. And to that, for me, that's sort of beginning to explain, but you're already doing it with informing, depending on the level of your kids. I mean, we this year have quite a few that are newcomers. They're in middle school and they've definitely missed some schooling because they're just not in middle school content level.
Yeah.
Writing or math or any of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think inform and connect or explain are so connected.
They are.
Like I'm not even gonna do quarter. I'm just gonna do text structures and then we're just gonna go through. I'm gonna put them together.
Okay. Thank you. And I think Daria wanted to join the conversation.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I probably will be done with that curriculum little chunk, and I was thinking, okay, what else can I do for this inform? And I thought, since they're doing this novel study for ELA, the refugee, how they have from 3 different religions, and I realized that they're absolutely clueless about it. And I thought, well, that would be great before Christmas, kind of introduce this 3 different religions. And when I started looking into it, and I'm like, well, to introduce those, you kind of have to do it through narrate, because you're narrating the stories. The main story that Jewish faith is based on, the Christian, the birth of Jesus, and Islam. And I thought, maybe that would be a neat way to say, well, you still can merge these two. You can learn something from narrate, and then you can write a report based on narration. But it will have different features. You don't start reports with once upon a time, while the stories that you base your report on might have those things. So I probably will have some kind of mix. And also I wanted to say that inform is a perfect introduction to explain and argue, especially like with newcomers. I think that's a perfect bite size for them. I think maybe explain and argue would be a little above their head, but they will have a good foundation with this inform. So I think it's good size.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I see 2 more hands up, and let me just check in with the time. We're at almost 4:20. So that would be the whole rest of the time for your small group discussions. So would you like to take these questions into your sleuth groups, or would you like to keep them here and reduce time in our sleuth groups? If you want to go ahead and do it here, unmute and talk, and that's Stephanie or Hernan. Maybe Stephanie first. We've heard from Hernan a lot, which I'm always grateful for.
I guess my only comment was just that I think it would be okay to bleed into explain, because we have so much of our 3rd quarter taken up by access testing and preparation for it. We won't really have time to teach explain fully.
Yeah, I like that thinking. Also, I'll say, I think Seth Beal is here, but he's one of the ones that said early on when I was floating this idea, if we wait for argue in 4th quarter, students aren't going to have been exposed to all 4 key language uses before they sit for the access, which is one of the reasons we try to start that introduction to key language uses, small unit plan organizer at the beginning. But certainly I do think that we're going to need to find these crossovers throughout as we continue building our unit plan organizers and seeing how we're going to go forward with all of this. That's smart. Thank you, Stephanie. Hernan?
Well, I just wanted to say that having a sense of order and key language uses, the implementation of key language uses in our lessons is new for everybody and students and for us too. So for me, having a sense of order, like first this, then we'll have explain and all that. So at least the students can get used to the kind of vocabulary and strategies, and we too. So having that sense of order has worked for me. And then, like you said, I do agree that in the future, I see myself working, like mix them all together. So we can inform and narrate at the same time, or it could be a process. First, we do narrate, and then at the same time, in the same lesson, we do inform, and then we go back to narrating. Something more like a blend.
More blended.
Yes, like by right now, I see myself much better little by little learning with the students how to do each one of the key language uses.
Absolutely. I'm reminded that the logo, and mine is not exact, right? The one from WIDA actually shows that all 4 of these blend together. And, it's not just one to the next one. It's not circular. It's not, they blend across and inside and outside of each other. So I'm reminded that they are not isolated key language uses, which is why, somewhere around here on page 227, we see how each key language use goes with the other one. So how inform is seen in those other ones. And I always think that paragraph in that book is really, really interesting. Any further comments before I move us into sleuth groups?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something quick. I like that idea that like it really, the different grade levels that we teach, they're pulling in different stories, that they're teaching, and those stories like sort of kind of go with different key language uses. So really sort of as we learn what those stories are, we could tie certain lesson plans that deal with the key language use to that content. And maybe the science and social studies is more, similar, but the literature might change a lot. So I just think that was important that was said, that like eventually we'll definitely be able to fit this in throughout the year, depending on the text. And also when people are talking about a form, I feel like they're talking about like the expressive inform a lot, like with kids are just, and not the interpretive part of the inform. And when I was looking at the interpretive part of inform, it's kind of like you're reading, you're informing yourself, like you're going back into the text, and that's why I wrote in the chat that it's kind of like all those reading comprehension things we tell students to do. That's in the inform part, which I thought was interesting. And you're asking them to pull stuff out of the text. They're not explaining it to you. They're like, they're informed. It's part of inform, and which I thought was interesting. I do a lot more interpretive, than expressive, I think, especially because I focus so much on reading, on literacy. There's a lot of interpretive parts.
I love that I'm hearing you say that we can use the key language use of inform to teach students how to pull information from a text, whether it's written, whether it's, a pamphlet, whether it's a TED Talk, whatever that text is, they can interpret it, and we can teach them the key language use so that they're pulling that information. Is that?
Yes, that's how it's written in the standards. If you look at the inform for first grade, there's a lot of like, it's reading comprehension sort of, which I like. But I thought it was odd that they used the word informed for that. And I'm trying to think of, maybe it means like inform themselves, so as they read. But
yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, Maureen, I agree that, specifically these 2 key language uses, narrate and inform, really do seem to follow right along with ELA's standards kind of delineation between information text and literature, like only vice versa, right? So yeah, I think that connects really easy for teachers who are following the ELA curriculum, or teachers like me who are also ELA teachers. That really connects quite neatly, but that doesn't mean that I've connected it so neatly to these other content areas. Javier, go ahead.
Yes, one thing that I mostly use I'm talking about high school level, is that students, I need to introduce them with the critical thinking, because that's one of the things that they're using for the EOC's exams, and they need to be understanding most of the academic language vocabulary. So I've been using Newsela, and one of the materials that I use most is that when we were talking about the COVID, something that is coming from the reality and the vocabulary that we're using in there. I spent, I promise you, with one article almost 1 week, because we were deeper with every single paragraph with the academical language, and of course also the contraction or the short expression like NCAE or NC this or that those things, they need to understand those things. And also that is one of the things that you said. And also I'm using the sequence, the process sequence, and then I'm using the scramble the sentences and put it in order according to the story appear and things like that, in order that to check the comprehension. Because most of the time when I'm seeing most teachers are making questions that big open, and the kids not able to answer those questions in that way because they need to like a more specific and clarify what they're looking for, because the students, they get confused, and when they try to use the Google Translate, that doesn't work at all. So that's what I need to ask. I mean, as a teacher myself, I'm putting on my students' shoes and I'm trying to understand the material in the way that they can do it, because at the end, when I need from them to do is a report using the academical language that we learn in the article, and also their opinion. Because in that case, I can use the argument, I can use the narrative, I can use the explaining, and I can use those things together. Because at the end, my student is able to be critical using all these main points. But I need to go since the beginning: academic language, vocabulary, looking for the words in the material, understanding the material, answering the questions, because I have like a guide questions for every single thing that they're gonna see in the material. And at the end, I need them to write down what did I learn from the material, and I give them like a guidelines, a word banks, and things like that that they can use it. And also, most important thing, checklist. I've asked them to make a checklist. For example, what is the main sentence that says, or the key sentence, or the main idea in each paragraph? That's the point that you need to write down, and it's going to help you at the end to make your report using the checklist.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So we have definitely limited ourselves on the sleuth group times. So you'll let me know in Kickup when you do the evaluation how you feel about all that, or in the chat, feel free to let me know there as well. But I am ready to move us into sleuth groups. I will give you as much time as I can. So I'll pull you back just a few minutes shy of 5 o'clock so that I can give you the Kickup stuff, and we can finish up that way. So with apologies for the limited amount of time, remember that your groups are based around these 4 big ideas. We have all of these different groups set up, and only 26 people here today. So that said, I did collapse these groups. And just real quick, every group has a good handful of people, except for Catherine, you and Megan, I put you together. So if when you hop in there, you want to hop right back out, then you can hang out here with me. Or you can go there and stay together with the 2 of you. That's great. So are there any questions about how we get into our sleuth groups? Okay. And let's see. This time, if you want to have a way to get started with the conversation, I would love for you to share your favorite mystery catchphrase. So Rebecca, can you tell me what your favorite mystery catchphrase is, or one that you remember?
The only one the one I thought of was Kim Jensen, because she always says click when she takes a mental picture with her photographic memory.
Perfect. So things like mine is, I remember Columbo would always turn back around and say, one more thing, one more question. And I always loved that you knew he got him when he turned around and asked that question. So if you want a reason and a way to start your conversations, you can start with that. But I do hope you have fun talking to each other about your new learning and new insights, whichever pathway you chose, and connecting it to all of this WIDA stuff we're doing. And then maybe just a quick check-in on how you're going towards your professional goals this year. All right, I will go ahead and send you to your groups and see you back in maybe 25 minutes. Hi, everybody, welcome back. I am skipping the slide where I ask you to give me feedback about your breakout rooms, but if in the chat you would like to share something, I would love to read it. So you're looking at my thank you slide now. And if you have something to add to the chat, go ahead. And in just a few minutes, I will put the kickup code for you there. And if you want to share out, if anybody has something really exciting that came from your chat or a new idea that you want to share because of your chat, please feel free to unmute and share it with the group.
I just want to send out a kudos, especially to Dr. Victoria Hanschel. She had this phenomenal comprehension idea. I think you should share that.
You talking about the listening comprehension one?
With the beads, I mean, it's for evergreen.
Okay. We like to do listening comprehension activities, especially after, we do this whole inform, narrate piece. So we had a reading on the Thanksgiving holiday with the Pilgrims and coming from Europe, and we showed where Europe was with America. It was whole social study inform piece. Well, after the reading and the questions and having students inform and restate ideas, we did a poem, a Thanksgiving poem, and embedded in the poem, it was a listening comprehension activity. They had pipe cleaners, and every time they heard a color, they had to add that color bead to the pipe cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
If Mrs. Swab is here, this is her idea. This is all Mrs. Swab. And so when they did that, if they had any beads left over, or if their colors were out of order, we knew that they did not understand. But once again, to see how they had to focus and how long it took them to craft it.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Swab did a whole nother piece with it. She had brought cranberry sauce to taste and just opened up their eyes to so many other things. And when we read the poem, the first time it was slow, and the second time we increased the speed. And it's just amazing how much they have to really intently listen to get the idea. So Mrs. Swab had a great poem for the Thanksgiving holiday.
That sounds great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I am so grateful to all of you for being here. I'm so glad that you had